here we go with the rewind for episode 1133. I'm starting with the Q&A, which means I haven't actually seen 1133 yet. It's a timey-wimey thing. Speaking of timey-wimey, you will notice that, like, if you've left a comment on, like, 1132, and I didn't answer it right here in this video, it's because only the patrons on a certain level, because I'm recording one per day, right? So, like, this is weeks before it's going to hit YouTube. So, only the patrons on a certain level, like the super early access, would have had time to leave comments before, I do the recording. But what I'm going to do as part of this Q&A will be to go back and catch any comments from starting with 1132. Anything from 1132 on, anybody who ever leaves a comment on these things, I will at some point during one of these One Piece rewinds go back to that comment, because that's my commitment. I want to answer or address or somehow acknowledge any comment from 1132 forward. So it doesn't matter. Like when this hits YouTube and there's a bunch of comments and you see the comments are like 4 weeks old or whatever, you can still leave a comment and it'll get addressed. So it'll just be later. But the good news is, by the time this hits YouTube, I will be caught up. So we're not going to be so far behind from now on. So for instance, like if you leave a comment on 1133, when you watch it, when you hear me say this on YouTube, I'll probably answer that comment next week, because I'm going week to week at that point, right? So I'll be able to go back and catch comments from weeks ago, because by the time this hits YouTube, I'm going to be week to week. So we'll be caught up by then. So it's not going to be an issue. Finally caught up. No early access. Well, probably like I'll be doing like movies and essays. There'll be some One Piece early access, because I'll pace that out, right? I'll do a bunch ahead of time and pace it out. But the actual episode reactions are going to be week to week, man. When I do them, I'm just going to post them. There's no reason to hold that back, because I think it drops on Sunday night. I'll record a reaction, do my rewind and all this shit, and then just drop it Monday, If it comes out. I believe it comes out Sunday. It may be Sunday morning my time, right? Those episodes will be coming out every Monday. So there's no reason to hold it back, right? The only reason I do early access anyway was because there was no way I'd be able to do. You've seen with like Bleach and JoJo, it's really hard for me to go day to day. I was trying to do Bleach and JoJo every day. It's like I wake up in the morning, I do these reactions, I post them. Wake up tomorrow morning, do those reactions, I post them. There's gonna be days I'm just not able to do that, and so that's why I have to record ahead. And then while I'm recording ahead, I need to pace it out, because if I record ahead and post it all that day, then I have nothing for tomorrow, right? So like I have to hold it back. And since I was holding it back, might as well get early access. That's my philosophy. I know some people intentionally hold shit back just so people go to their Patreon. That's not really what I'm doing. For me, it's just so that I can have something for every day. So it'd be like a regular upload schedule people can count on. That's the whole point. So once we're week to week, I'll just post week to week, right? It's the only way to do it that I can see. At any rate, let's go ahead and get into the comments. This is for the regular episode. There's only 2 comments for the actual reaction. Don't worry, we've got plenty for the rewind. HIG, I remember you saying you'd never cry again on this show. Hee hee. Well, aren't I the butt of the joke? Well, it was funny because I remember saying that, and I had cried for Brooke. And then we went a long time. And I don't know if I just became a cold-hearted bastard, or if the author just went away from the tragic backstories. Because here's the thing, you can do that too much, right? Like, if we're going to rank the most tragic backstories I've ever seen, Brooke, for me, is still number 1. Simply because the horror, the existential horror of you're sitting there with 40 of your best friends you've been with for so long, and you got to really put yourself in the headspace of this person, Brooke, right? And as an author, I do that. I really go in there and I put myself in that space, because you got to think about this. Each one of us walking around here, me, you, every one of us, we think we're immortal. We have been the protagonists of our own story for our entire lives. If you're 30 years old, for 30 years, you have been the center of your own attention. Now, you haven't been the center of the world's attention. You haven't been the center of the room's attention. You're not the main character in everybody's story. I'm talking about you, your story. You are the main character of your story, right? You are the center of your attention. So you're seeing the world through your eyes, and you can't imagine the world without you, right? So you've survived many things to get to 30 years old. Like when I was 5 years old, I ran across traffic right in front of a car. If that car had been going a little bit faster, I'd be dead. I survived that. I wouldn't be here. There's parallel realities right now where I got hit by that car and I never existed past 5 years old. The dude and the driver actually stuck his head out the window and said, "Stupid kid," because he was terrified, right? Like, it's one of the stupidest things I've ever done in my life. You know, there are parallel realities where I died there. So we've all survived very, close encounters of one kind or another. Like maybe a building's caught on fire an hour after we left or something like that. Whatever. Like we've all had our own close encounters of one kind or another, right? So we survive all these things, and then we reach a point where we're in a no-win situation. Like maybe we're trapped underground. There's been a cave-in. We're trapped underground. There's no way out. We have no tools. We only have 2 hours of oxygen. And in that moment, we have to confront our own mortality. The horror of that is like, wow, I've been through all this shit. I survived all this shit because of that one mistake coming down here today, right before this cave-in. Now I'm dead. That killed me. That one choice. And you got to sit there and think about that shit until you die, right? Like, so the horror, like he had been through all these adventures. They'd been sailing around the world. They had seen all these things. They had done all these things. And here they were. They're all going to die. And so they're playing this music, knowing they're going to die, and they start dropping one by one. And man, that broke me. I cried a lot with Luffy when he was climbing up the mountain with Nami. That Brook backstory where he's playing the song, and they're dying one by one. Just the horror of that, the complete total horror of that, and losing your best friends, these people you spend all this time with, and the horror of this is where our adventure ends. All of that just overcame me, and it broke me. To me, that's the most tragic backstory we've ever had. Nami's way down there. Like, she had a tragic backstory, but she's way down there. Because this show is famous for the tragic backstories, right? But I don't think they're all created equal. I think Brooks is the worst, by far. Kuma's starting to rank up there. Just about the fact that, like, we need to find out why he chose lobotomy, whatever. You know what I mean when I say he was lobotomized. Whatever the hell that was. He chose death. Seemingly. We don't know for sure. We can assume that. But for me, like, why he's number 2 is because he was a sweet boy. He was a sweet person. He was a non-violent person. There's nothing in this world more tragic than a non-violent person being pushed to violence, to me. Because he didn't want to hurt anybody, man. He just wanted to live his life and have fun and giggle and make people happy and help people. It's all he wanted to do. And look what this sorry-ass world turned him into. Somebody who's violent. Somebody had to resort to violence. That's tragic. Right? So for me, that's why it's number 2. Now we'll see how this all particularly plays out. Because, yes, losing people is tragic. You have a wife, or I guess they weren't married. There's another comment that addresses that. I guess they never married. So, okay, they didn't satisfy the bureaucracy by filling out the paperwork. I don't give a shit. That's his wife. I don't give a shit what the bureaucracy says, right? That's just my opinion. But, you can lose a spouse, even losing children, which is probably the most tragic loss there is in this world, is a parent losing a child, because the parents are supposed to go first. The children are supposed to lose the parents. The parents aren't supposed to lose the children. That's just the way it is. That's what Dad always said. He wanted to go first. He didn't want to bury me, right? And he got his wish. And that's what he wanted. He didn't want to, and that was his worst fear, right, was having to bury one of his kids. The thing is, losing people is tragic, but to me, the most tragic thing is when the world changes you into a worse version of yourself. That's the worst thing that can happen to somebody. When you get changed into a worse version of yourself, you were this good version of yourself, and the world changed you, right? We've seen it many times in fiction. The parent, Last of Us is dealing with this. Like, you lose somebody important to you, and then you turn violent, you turn evil, and do these horrible things, right? That's tragic, man. That's a tragedy. Diaper Boy, the whole Diaper Boy thing is tragic, but he's down the list because, like, it didn't really change him for the worse. Maybe change him for the better. Like, he became, like, a silly, irrelevant kind of dude because that's what reached his wife. It's sad, but that didn't make him a worse person. He was already evil. Like, he was already a mercenary, whatever, criminal, It made him a slightly better person, in my opinion. Like, he's walking around with a diaper and he don't care who doesn't like it. He don't care. to me, that's kind of a little bit better of a person, right? So, to me, the biggest tragedy is when you're turned into a worse version of yourself. That sucks. That just really sucks, you know. So, I hadn't cried for a long time, and I don't think that this right here, this episode, or this backstory made me cry for the first time since Brooke. I think there was one or two other times I cried in between. I don't remember what the circumstances were. There's a couple times, right? But even this, like, you don't understand. I don't think I filmed the whole thing because I'm not sitting here. I'm not like Sophie reacts. Hey, look at the tear. Look at the water on my finger. There's reactors that actually do that shit. Even though you're crying for real, that feels performative. Hey, pay attention. See, I had an emotional reaction. Love me, right? I don't think it's like that. It feels that way. I don't like it. You know, another thing that like so many of these reactors do. Look at these goosebumps. Can you see the goosebumps? Do we care? Like, it's okay to say I have goosebumps. But Sophie reacts, and then there's Steph, whatever her name is. I just saw her do that yesterday. She was watching the Game of Thrones reaction, and she had goosebumps. She's shoving her arm in our face. Look, we'll take your word for it, man. I don't know what that is. Like, why they're obsessed with that. Like, ooh, goosebumps. Yeah, you know. For me, by the way, it's less goosebumps and more of like a chill down my spine. Can't see that, so fortunately, I'm not shoving my spine in your face. Hey, look at my spine. See, it's cold now. I don't know, man. I don't know what that is, but I don't. So I don't think I filmed the whole Brooke thing, but it broke me. I'm talking about. I was sobbing, like I was ugly crying, like literally like sobbing, somebody had kicked me in the nuts. Like it just this yesterday. And whatever other days like I've had, like there will be some, there'll be a tear, and what happens typically is there's two kinds of like tears that some of them just sit right here. It comes out of the eyeball, but it's not very much. And it just kind of like sits right there. It's distracting. It's like, hey, we got water right next to our eyes, right? So you either wipe it away or you just put up with it. I tend to want to put up with it because I'm not trying to like be performative. Hey, look, I got a tear in my eye, but it like just sits there, right? And then there's the kind of, like, there's so much water coming out. It's always like the same path, too, right? It'll go here, down here, and then right here, and it'll just kind of hang out right here, usually, unless there's even more coming out, and then it'll start falling, right? But there'll be like this trail, right? Like, it's the same trail every damn time, right? It's contour of my face, I guess. So there's that, right? So those are the two stages of crying that I typically experience, and this the ones the little drops in eyes happens a lot. A lot of times it's just from laughing. I'll be laughing and man, my eyes will be wet, right? But then every now and then, like if something sad's happening, like that happens quite a bit, probably once a week at least. I don't consider that crying. That's just like it's a little bit of emotion came out. The track that may be once a month, sometimes once every 2 months. That's not as common. That's when the shit's getting real. And that was yesterday, right? The track, I had a track yesterday, or whatever, it was either this last episode or whatever the previous backstory. I think it was this one. I can't remember, but I think it was yesterday. But that is nothing compared to the Brooke thing. The Brooke thing, I was like openly sobbing, like ugly crying. I was a wreck for like 20 minutes. I had some of it was on camera. I haven't rewatched that reaction. Some of it was on camera, but like at some point I turned the camera off and just, I was wrecked. And finally I was like, okay, well I guess I better try to finish this. What my thoughts for this episode? Man, that was rough. There was just something, but it just hit me the exact right way, man. Just the horror of the way they were dropping one after the next, and they had a good attitude up to the end. They're gonna face death with bravery, which is really hard to do. Really hard to do. Yeah, I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it. So that was a whole nother level. Nothing's approached that since then, right? So like that, that was crying. There's this shit yesterday or the track or whatever. That's not really crying, I don't think, But yeah, for the purposes of this comment, the show has made me cry. Like, I consider the track a cry. Like, it has made me cry. But I don't know that like the thing with Brooke will ever happen again with this show, because like at some point you're like, okay, well this is what he does, and I think he overdoes it a little bit. Not every story, like the toy soldier and Rebecca. I'm sure I cried there. You know, that shit was sad as hell. Just the horror of, and that was a whole different kind of horror. It is interesting. It's not the same kind of tragedy every time. He does a different kind of tragedy every time. He's brilliant there. Of she doesn't remember you, but you're trying to be there for her, right? He also has a way of mixing the comedy with the tragedy. Because when like a boy tried to, a boy was like interested in her, the toy soldier came in and kicked his ass. That was funny. But then there's a whole tragedy all around that, right? So that was one. But like I do think like not every backstory has to be tragic, and I think he does that too much, and he is known for it. It's a cliche at this point, but he's really good at it. And this one is this for me is the second most tragic story he's ever told. But we got to play it out and see how it finishes first. So who knows for sure? But at this point, I think so. This one's from Power of Death. I'm glad you noticed that she's only 12. That's why Vegapunk was panicking about her safety and calling her a child. Yeah, that does definitely make sense, right? Throughout the arc. It's because she's only 12. She aged up in a defense mechanism against the pirates, plus everyone is at their strongest in their 20s. Yeah, it's very interesting. And I recorded reactions to Alien Earth. The first 2 episodes dropped yesterday. I'm doing this thing where I've been doing this thing lately where if there's something I'm interested in watching, I'm going to go ahead and record a reaction to it, even though it probably never gets sponsored. But at least I have it in the bank if anybody ever wants to see it. Or if I ever get time, I can maybe start releasing on YouTube or something. That's the plan. But there's a similar storyline there where they take these 11 and 12-year-olds and they put them in android bodies, right? Like these mechanical bodies. They're still 12, but they look like adults. Now, I think that Alien Earth did it better. Because here, she never read as 12. Where in Alien Earth, they're adults, and there's like adult actors playing them, right? They're adults. But they're still 12 mentally, and you can tell they're still 12 mentally. There's just little moments here and there. They get, when shit's breaking out, they're taking care of business. But in the spaces in between, they still read as 12, they react to things as 12, rather than as a adult who's just seen more and been around more and is just not as affected by things, right? And I think to preserve the secret, because this is a great reveal. We're thinking she's sitting there like a 1720. We know she has the aging power. Like, why didn't this ever occur to anybody? Maybe it did. It didn't occur to me. We know she has the aging power, but to preserve the secret, he just had her act like she's 17. And she could be worldly wise. I don't believe in this like old soul shit. I think that's what creepy people say to kids, But I don't believe in that crap. I think your soul is the age of your body, right? Unless you believe in reincarnation, I guess. Maybe that's where this comes from. I actually do kind of, I want to believe in reincarnation. I don't actually believe in it, but I want to. I would think it would be cool. And it kind of fits because nature doesn't really, energy can be neither created nor destroyed. If a soul is energy, physics tells us it wouldn't be destroyed. It'd be converted into something else, on maybe another body's soul, right? So there's a little bit of science, so just a little bit of science that can lead you down that path. So maybe we do have old souls. I don't know. But to this point, though, like she, another comment we'll talk about in a minute here is talking about how that's Jenny's personality. So it's nature versus nurture, which is what I was saying in the reaction. Like, she has no role models who act like her, so it has to be nature. It has to be genetics. She has to get it genetically from her mother, right? And then possibly from whoever her father was. Maybe he's also like a very bold personality. Probably not, because the celestial dragons all seem kind of weak. They're not really. They don't stand on their own 2 feet. They rely on everybody else to take care of them. So, Bonnie is not that. So it's probably all from her mother. So it's nature, right? So her nature gives her a bold personality, but she is still only 12, right? So, and she's read a lot of books. That's great, but you're still only 12. You're naive. You're inexperienced. You're just not going to always react like an adult, and she always did. Not that we spent a huge amount of time with her. And if you look at the arc where she's, this arc, you can, looking back, I can see some immaturity here and there with just the single-mindedness which she was going after Vegapunk, and just the idea, that's a very childish idea, I'm gonna kill you, or whatever you feel, like whatever a child feels emotionally, they think that that's gonna last forever. So it's like, I hate you. They feel that way in a moment. They don't hate you. They don't know what hate is. They haven't experienced hatred, right? They experience anger and they hear people use the word hate, so they think that what they're feeling is hate, and that's not what they're feeling. So that's why they'll say they hate you, right? And they just blurt shit out and don't mean it. So she was doing some of that. Looking back, she was doing some of that in this arc. But it does make me wonder if the author only got the idea in this arc. So he did it here in this arc. But when we saw her previously, you never got any immaturity vibe from her, Let me know if you did. But it's a great twist. It's so cool that it turns out that she's only 12 and she just aged herself up. I really like that a lot. All right, so to the other video. All right, the first batch is from, I think like the first 8 are from HIG. These episodes were coming out in the last few months. But the chapters that these episodes adapt, those were coming out 2 years ago. Yeah, so I misspoke. What I said, well, I think what I said was, I'm sure what I said was, that the anime was coming out when I first started reacting. What I meant was the manga. I mean, I just misspoke, right? Because I had been told it was a manga, So I just misspoke. But yeah, so the manga was these issues of the manga were coming out when I first started reaction, which I just think is really cool. I like that we're at that point, They never married. Kuma didn't want to marry Jenny because he was afraid that she would suffer the same fate as his mom, who was married to a buccaneer. Kuma's dead. But in the end, she got caught and suffered that fate in it regardless. Yeah. But like I said, I mean, to me, they're married. Because here's the thing, right? Like, well, actually, I think you're saying something more than I realized at first. You're saying they weren't smashing, right? You're saying they weren't together. Because what I was about to say was, it doesn't matter what the bureaucracy says, what the paperwork says. If you're smashing, if you're living in the same house, if you're living as husband and wife, you're husband and wife. So, I don't think the people that killed Kuma's mother looked at the paperwork to see if they were, oh, wait a minute, they're not married, okay, we'll let her live. That's not what that was. They were together, so that was enough for her to be killed, regardless of whether or not they're married. I think what you're saying is these two weren't together. Like, they never smashed. That's kind of what I was feeling too, right? Like, I never got the vibe they actually got that to that point. Like, the show doesn't really do sex. I don't know. I mean, the show will show two people get together. Maybe they'll show two people get married, and then they'll show a baby, right? That's all we get. That's all I want. We don't need this series proves what I've been saying since I started my reaction channel, and what I believe since I started being a filmmaker. You don't need sex scenes. There's enough you can do without showing two naked actors throwing all the stuff off the kitchen table, and he slams it down the kitchen table and starts going like a jackhammer. We don't need to see that scene to realize that these two people smashed. You can just show them kissing. That's what they did in the 40s and 50s, man. You show them kissing, you fade out, you fade in, we know what happened. That's all you need. There's never been a sex scene that gave me information on characters that I wouldn't have gotten some other way. Like, say you want to say a character is selfish. There's plenty of ways to show they're selfish without showing a sex scene where they're selfish, right? Say you want to show that he doesn't really love her, she doesn't really love him, and so, like, there was a House of the Dragon scene where this woman was having sex with the king. It was his wife. And they show him, he's smashed, he's on top of her, right? And they show her face, and she's completely bored. She's just kind of like looking up like this while he's going to town. Like, completely uninterested. Now, that is character. That gave us information we may not necessarily have gotten any other way. Because she did like him. He was like way older than her. That was one of the problems. She did like him. And she could be affectionate with him in other ways, like hug him or kiss him or something like that. She didn't have a problem with that. She was just bored and had no interest in actually having sex with this man, right? The only way to show that is when they're having sex. So that is a very rare case where you have to show the sex. And it wasn't like, there wasn't, like I said, knocking everything off the table and we're seeing naked ass and all this stuff, right? They didn't have to do all that. They just showed like him on top of her. But that was a case where the sex scene actually gave us information we really couldn't have gotten any other way unless you told somebody, which you wouldn't tell anybody. You're not going to tell anybody you're not interested in the king. So that's the only way you can really give that. If it's the only way you can give us the information, okay, fine, like you do it. But that should be the bar for me, because otherwise you're just wasting screen time. Because like the entire plot stops, and then we're gonna sit here and watch two attractive actors show their stuff that we can see on Pornhub. Show everything for 2 minutes. We're sitting there waiting for, okay, can the plot start again? Has it been 2 minutes? Okay, let's, another 30 seconds, fine. All right, okay, so thank you for wasting 2.5 minutes. Can we get back to the goddamn plot, right? Because, and the reason I say the plot stops, nothing changes from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene. We don't learn anything, except in a rare case. There's no plot development, there's no character development, there's no progression of the plot, unless while they're smashing, you get somebody walking behind them stealing shit out of their room. And we see that. There's no plot progression. You're just literally wasting our time. It's just like filler in anime, like everything I complain about. You need progression, man. It's a busy world, man. We ain't got time to sit around watching bullshit. We want to get in and get out, get in and get the story and get out, right? We ain't trying to waste extra time. That's how I feel like. So anyway, this show proves, because there's been nothing detrimental in this show for not ever seeing a sex scene in the show. Like, I don't even think, I don't, has there ever even been a kiss, a romantic kiss between two people implying in a fade out, implying that they had sex? I don't think so. There's been a few kisses here and there. But there is, like, this is the most sexless show I've ever seen in my life. And it's great, because I like that, because it's pure plot, right? Pure character development. Well, and then, they waste our time in other ways. So I guess the moral of the story there is a show's going to waste your time. It's just how are they going to do it. Maybe I would prefer sex over, hey, here's a flashback to a scene we saw 2 minutes ago. Here's the last 5 minutes of last episode. Let me replay it for you. Like, maybe I would rather have sex than that. That's one of the rare times I would say that. I'm not a prude. I don't care. Like, nudity doesn't shock me and sex doesn't shock me. You're wasting my time is what I'm saying. Like, let's move on. You're not giving me anything new, right? So, point being of all that, because this is such a sexless show, sometimes you have to connect the dots on your own. And you have to intuit. You have to infer from what they're showing. And in this case, I think I inferred they were smashing. Even though I think I mentioned in the last episode they probably weren't. I was starting to get the feeling. Once I realized Bonnie was not his biological daughter, at that point, I think is when I started to question whether they had ever had sex. And apparently they haven't, right? But this is the kind of show where you don't know for sure, right? So I guess what you're saying here is he never took her in a romantic way. Well, took her is a little a weird way to phrase it. He didn't accept her in a romantic way and like her accept him because of his fears of what happened, right? But he would have otherwise, is what I guess what to say. And he just loved her as a person, right? He just loved her completely as a person, regardless of whether or not they were having sex. And obviously that's why he would raise her baby, right? This is a person who had a huge amount of love, and it's too bad that he never got to experience the romantic side of things. He probably died a virgin, right? Like, as far as we know. We will never know for sure because this is that kind of show. But, yeah, I guess what we're saying is, like, they never even smashed. That's interesting. I hadn't really, like, fully conceptualized that until you said this. We already knew about Kuma training young Sabo. This was the thing, I don't remember this. I'm glad that I knew somebody was going to come in big and let me know about this. We already knew about him training Sabo at Tigo with the former revolutionary headquarters. That was in Sabo's flashback when he was reintroduced in Dressrosa. So this is a quick flash callback, and it helps place that moment within the timeline of everything that's happening. Yeah, this is the kind of thing where it really just, this is here for the people that are going to watch it 2 or 3 times and scrutinize it and maybe fill out the timeline. This helps them a lot. I don't remember him training Sabo, but I assume that must have been what happened, right? So yeah, that's what that was. He's quoting me here. I missed the entire cage bed thing. I don't know how the hell I missed that. But yeah, well, I think it was because I missed the dialogue. And then, so seeing it, because I remember seeing the bars, I guess what I assumed was, I remember thinking back, it was like I was seeing the shot. You know how sometimes a bedroom will have like a skylight, and then the skylight will have the little supports in the middle of the glass. So it's like several panes of glass with like the metal in between. I assumed that we were doing that. We were looking through a skylight. I don't know why I assumed that, but I saw the bars. So I was like, well, my mind said, okay, with the cameras above the house, we're looking through a skylight, and we can see her laying there sleeping in the skylight. Is what I thought it was until I saw the dialogue, and I never saw like the other shot where she's in a cage because I was looking at him. I think so. Yeah, I just missed that shit. Every episode of One Piece, and really every chapter, is littered with details like that are very easy to miss. That's why it's good to take your time with the story and go back. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing moving forward. So I'm going to be catching a lot more shit on my own rather than having to be told that, right? Yeah. Because here's the thing. Under the old conditions, I would have never known about the cage bed thing because I wouldn't have gone back, and I don't know if anybody would have mentioned it, you know. Hey, by the way, you know, she was sleeping in a cage next to him because his big ass would have rolled over on her, right? What if that ever happened? He wakes up and he's laying on top of the cage, and he would have killed her if it hadn't been for the cage. Probably not. I think, you know, because there are parents that sleep with their infant baby, like, you know, between them sometimes, like at a hotel or whatever. They just don't have a crib with them. And so they just have this baby in between them so they can't fall off the side of the bed because they're in between. And they don't roll over on the baby. They know. Their sleeping mind knows there's a baby there, right? I've never heard of a parent rolling over on top of their baby in those conditions. So I don't think he would have. But it's hilarious that she's in a cage. It's just absolutely hilarious. Yeah. And I would have never noticed. I don't think anybody would have brought it up. So who knows what else I've missed in the past because of that. Oh, by the way, you know, that talking duck, he was playing cards in the background. You know, I never noticed it, and nobody ever brought it up because why would they, right? So he's quoting me again. Why are they in a church instead of a house? The church is their only house. It was explained at the start of Kuma's flashback that his parents owned a church, and Kuma's dad was a priest. You can see them living in a church. So when Kuma came back after escaping God Valley and getting this power, he just returned to his parents' church. Makes total sense. Also, like, well, his parents were big too, right? I like how big the church is because there's room for him. He can walk around without hitting his head on the ceiling, right? And he can get through the doors and shit. So, you know, I just assumed just because it was big enough for him. But this makes more sense, obviously. Do you think there will be vampires? He's quoting me again. Of course, there will be vampires related to some vampire devil fruit. So do you think it has to be related to the devil fruit? That wasn't something I really thought about. So, because we have dragons, or at least we used to. I think the dragons have died out, right? Other than fruit dragons. But, you know, like there was a filler arc that had dragons, but they kind of talked about during that arc that they don't exist otherwise. That there was a surprise to run into dragons. We have dragons. We have giants. We have flying angel people. The Skypiea thing. I don't know why we wouldn't just... I mean, of course, we have the multiple joint people, the long legs and long arms, you know, people. What else? Just, I'm talking about naturally occurring people, not fruit-powered change people. Fish people. We have fish people. So, I don't know why we wouldn't just have actual vampires, right? Like, I think we could. I think it's possible, unless it's already been shown some other way in a future chapter. I don't think we can rule it out that there could just be vampires, right? We've seen zombies too. You know, that was fruit power based. But yeah, I think there could be naturally occurring vampires. I don't know why I don't think we can rule it out. Is what I'm saying, because of the other kinds of people we've seen in this world. The fruit power thing probably would, if they ever do get vampires in the actual story, that'll probably be how it happens. But I wouldn't mind seeing naturally occurring vampires. You know, like some kind of island that's mostly dark all the time. Remember, Vegapunk said that anything that humans imagine and desire manifests itself in the devil fruit. That is interesting, by the way. It is a manifestation. So, if there is a sentient power behind the devil fruits, and I think there is, it could be a collaboration. You know, it could be like maybe a way to, like God sorting through prayers. It'd be, okay, the sentient being could be like, okay, well, here's all these desires of mankind. Let me fulfill these. Those over here are stupid. I'm not going to have somebody have the power to turn their fingers into potato chips, right? That's stupid. I'm not doing that. But this person over here thinking about vampires, let me fulfill that one, right? There could be an organization behind it, right? Or just the power of the wish. Like enough people believe something happens. Neil Gaiman was big on that. Like the power of belief. Back in a long time ago, 4,000 years ago, people believed that the Greek gods existed, so they did. But then they stopped believing them, so they lose power. They're not as powerful anymore. They're kind of still walking around here today, but they don't have any power because nobody worships them, right? That kind of thing. So that makes a lot of sense. It is very interesting. And that there is no point in arguing about the existence of quote-unquote gods in the world, which could be applied to any mythical creature. Because if enough people believe in a possible future evolution of humanity, including the dreams of people from different dimensions, then a devil fruit will be born that actualizes that particular wish. Yeah, I don't know about arguing, but I think that there can be a fruit-powered god or a creature powerful enough to be considered a god, but then also be an actual god. Both things can exist in the same reality, right? There can be an actual deity here that the fruit powers can't affect because it's a deity, right? I don't know if the story's going to go there. I'm just saying it's theoretically possible. What we call a god can mean many different things, like he kind of alludes to here, right? So you could have a fruit-powered god, but it'd be interesting if a fruit-powered god ran into an actual god. It's like, oh shit, so this is what a real one's like. There's levels of shit. Like, a fruit-powered god could be maybe what's considered a demigod, And then an actual god, a god who existed before fruit powers ever came into play. And if my theory is correct, the actual god resulted in the fruit powers. The devil fruits. I don't know. It's very interesting to think about. This whole, I still need to wrap my mind around this whole, like, wishes, create the fruits. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with that. I just need to kind of, like, let that cook a little bit more. And then, I think I'll be able to apply it to any new situation we run into. Right now, I'm still kind of like, it's not cooked. It hasn't cooked enough. The cookie dough is still fresh. So, why is Bonnie a hard ass? This is what from her mom. Bonnie's personality is like Jenny's. So nature versus nurture, kind of what I was talking about. That's not the same Bible, yes. Yes, it is. It's the same Bible that Kuma carries. Here's the thing. This was a massive Mandela effect for me. I'm obsessed with the Mandela effect, and I think this is a classic example of where it came from as a thing. Because as soon as I read this comment, I went straight to the image search, and I searched Kuma, manga and anime, and I'll be damned if there isn't, like, because in my head, he carried a book with the word Bible on it, and everything else was blank. It was like, the word Bible is at the top, and the rest of it was just a book cover. There was no picture. I don't remember ever seeing a picture on the front of his book, right? I went to image search, and it was every damn picture I picked up. Every goddamn picture had every goddamn image had a picture in the front of the book, going all the way back. From the first time we meet that son of a bitch to where he's transporting people everywhere. Never know, or don't remember now. Maybe it'd be hilarious if I commented on the picture back in the day. The Mandela effect, right? Like, this proves the Mandela effect, because we have a video record of me looking at these episodes, and I can be looking at these episodes, and you can see from the bottom part that there is a picture in the Bible. And then now, a year later, we have video evidence of me not remembering the picture in the front of the book. So that's why I said that. Like, I thought it was just a plain book cover with the word Bible on top, and that was it. Now, in my defense, very weak defense, most of the time his arm is around that part of the book. But even in those cases, you can see the bottom. You can see there's a picture there. You can see a little bit at the top. You always clearly see the word Bible, right? But I guess because his arm is in the way of the picture most of the time, that's why I didn't remember it. But, like, man, I would have bet actual money that his book was plain, which is why I said that yesterday, right? So it's wild to me that he had a picture in the book. That's crazy. And then he this is a pretty detailed long comment. I'll let you check it out yourself. This is in the rewind for episode 1132. A lot of details about the book, right? It's really cool. And a lot of stuff about how, like, if you were to go on a trip, where would you go? Like, he says that to people now. Like, he said it to Periwinkle, right? So, is he originally started talking about that with his daughter. You know, this he is one of the tightest written characters, the non-retconnist characters the author has put into the series. Because everything lines up. This is what I'm talking about with the lack of continuity errors and plot holes. Everything from the moment we first meet this sumbitch until now, everything lines up and is consistent internally and externally. Internally consistent means he says, "Where would you like to go?" And then years later, we find out what he means by that, like where it started. That's internally consistent. That's you don't even know it's consistent, and it's consistent until like way later you realize it's consistent. That's what I mean by internally consistent. And then externally consistent is consistent, noticeably consistent as you go along, right? So even up to the fact that, like, from the very first time we see him, there is an image in the cover of the book, and then here when she's holding it, there's an image, so it's clearly the same book, right? So yeah, but he has a great comment. It's a long one, so go ahead and check that out. All right, the last three comments are from Power of Death. After watching you do the scene rewind, I enjoyed the fact that you're picking up on details, and that now I think I definitely prefer that over ranking of characters. Like, do we really want to hear how you would rate Sanji F tier every time he does the squiggle? First of all, I didn't know that was called the squiggle. You know, like, that makes total sense. It looks like a squiggle, but I guess that's the fan word for it, right? I actually think the squiggle is funny as everything else that I don't like about it, right? You know, we won't go inside it right now. But yeah, I mean, it can be boring. Like, back in the day, a long time ago, on the Dead Room or Dead Zone, there was a Dead Zone TV series, right? And it was based on the Stephen King book, The Dead Zone. But back in the Dead Zone message boards, I think it was the official Sci-Fi Channel message board for the Dead Zone. After each episode that night, I would write a report card, and I would grade each character in that episode. And I would have funny commentary with it, right? It'd be like, say the main character, John Smith, was a dick to somebody. I'd give him an F because he was a dick to somebody. The next week, he might get an A, right? It was all just that one episode. And it got super popular, and people would be waiting for me to post it every week. And it was one of the, there would be like an episode discussion thread, and then there would be my report card, and those would be the two most popular threads every week, right? And people got really into it, and they really liked it a lot, and all that stuff. But it got to the point, I didn't know this at the time, but even the showrunners and the actors would check out the report card every week because they thought it was funny. Because when I met Nicole DeBauer, I think her name is, the one who played the love interest on this series, at a convention, and I just had one of these report cards printed out for her to sign because I just thought it'd be cool. She could sign one of these report cards. I could tell the people on the message board about that thing. I was young. I was clout farming, clout chasing back then. Young people do. She recognized it. She said, "Oh, you're the guy that does this," and she talked about how they would all talk about it every week. Not online, they're just in private text and stuff like that. They would text each other about the report card. So I was like, wow, man, I actually achieved a little small modicum of fame for 5 minutes. I think it was only like one season, then people got busy with other shit, right? I did it for the whole series. But there was that one season, I guess, it was like really popular. But that's kind of where what I was thinking when I did this. But the thing was, it wasn't about the letter grades, it was about the commentary. That the people, like, nobody gave a shit that somebody got an A or somebody got an F. Mainly it would just be if you saw an F, you knew I was pissed. And so you were excited to see what angry thing I would write about that character, right? And why, right? All that shit. But that's kind of what I was channeling. But, like, yeah, the letter grades are irrelevant. They don't matter. Like, ranking characters I don't think really means anything. It's all so relative, and we're never going to agree with each other. Who are the strongest characters? Who are the coolest characters? Nobody cares. It's just, it's fun to do if you're trying to, kill an hour. So the grades would be an entryway into talking about the characters. What is my intention? Which is what I did back in the day with the Dead Zone. But yeah, I didn't. I was gonna do it for yesterday's rewind because that was one of the things I talked about. It's like I was either gonna do a character MVP or I was gonna do a letter grade report card, right? And I realized I was like the video was already gonna be an hour, and I pretty much covered. There was a really like there was the two characters. There was Kuma and Bonnie, and I talked about them a lot, so I felt like I'd covered it. So like it won't be an every episode thing. It'll be like because here I've already been doing the Q&A for 47 minutes raw, unedited. So this is going to be a long ass video, so I'm not going to do a report card here either. You know, so it'll be like if there just wasn't any questions, and or I just don't talk forever about the questions, and it's a really short video, I'll do a report card just so we can have a decent sized video for each one of these. Otherwise, I don't think I'm going to do it because, like I said, it's not as strong an idea as some of these other things. I love the Q&A and I love the rewind so far. So, also, I kind of want to say to be more careful about the potential copyrights if you're going to show the entire scenes without any covering. Yeah, yesterday's rewind was demonetized. I thought I was going to be okay. I'm lucky it wasn't blocked. I originally thought it was going to be blocked. But I thought it was going to be okay, but because it didn't have any sound. But I guess I just had the scenes going too long. You know, and I don't want to put like what I do for the YouTube edited videos where I've got the fair use, whatever the hell, you know, text covering it, which kind of fools the computer a little bit. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to try for this one is I'm going to stop the playback before I start talking. Because a lot of times I would just start talking and I hadn't stopped the playback yet. Like I was waiting to get to another scene or I just happened to be talking before I stopped it. I was pretty careless about that. So that was a problem, right? So I'm just going to have to intentionally force myself to stop the playback before I start talking. It'll be a still image. So that should be fine. We'll try that this time. Because I'm not trying to get a copyright strike on the channel, you know. And that would be the dumbest reason ever. Because you're not even hearing the audio, and we're not even doing a reaction. I'm just doing a playback, right? So that would be dumb. All right, and the final comment is this is also Power Death. Fun fact: there was one chapter Oda couldn't finish on time in the entire history. I actually heard about this when it happened. I guess it was when I'd started my reactions, and people were talking about. I remember. I don't know who it was. It may have been Klaus. Because he was one of the early big fans, but he only liked One Piece up until the time skip, so he bugged out after that, right? But somebody was telling me, oh, just this last week, you know, he released a chapter without the art wasn't finished. It was like a bunch of the panels weren't finished, and he was sick, and everybody's worried about him, and they want him to chill out and take more time off and all this stuff. And I remember when it happened. I remember people talking to me about it because I had started the reactions by that point. I was like, oh, shit. And see, at that time, it gave me the idea he was really old. I thought he was in his 60s. You know, because he had been doing this for 25 years, and, you know, it would be understandable if he had started at 40. Apparently, he started really young, so he's not even 50 yet, I think, something like that. So he's got plenty of time. But at the time, it gave me the idea he was really old and, you know, sick. That's why he was sick, and his arm is failing or whatever. But, yeah, I'd heard about this when it first happened. And apparently, this episode was the one that relates to the manga that was unfinished. This was happening while Oda got sick and was going through surgeries, etc. 2 years ago. So there was only a few chapters being released at the time. This is the main reason the anime took 6 months hiatus, so it let the manga stay ahead because Oda probably only made about 6 chapters in those 6 months. Yeah, eventually that was going to catch up to everybody, right? Catch up to the anime. Because I assume he does weekly chapters, right? So 6 chapters in 6 months, one a month, not great. And one of them wasn't even finished. And that was during this storyline, which I guess these flashbacks, right? So not only are you're sitting there waiting for the Saturn confrontation with Luffy and everybody else. Not only do you have to sit through the flashback, but also you have to sit through all this hiatus, which, you know, I'm a content creator. If anybody understands, sometimes you just can't make your deadlines. I do. I totally get it, right? And I'm a workaholic, and so is he, right? You can only do what you can do. This has been my mantra for years, ever since I started filming. Like, You can only do what you do. If you can't do it, you can't get to it. You can't get to it. There ain't shit you can do about it. Like if you can't get to it for whatever the reason is, you're out of the house, the internet's down, you lost power, you're sick, you feel like crap, whatever the reason. If you can't get to it, you can't get to it. There's nothing we can do. So I pretty much wash my hands of any depression as a result of that because I can only do what I can do. He can only do what he can do. So I'm not knocking him. I'm not like in any way judging him on that. I'm just saying for the fans, you're already sitting through some goddamn flashbacks before you get back to Saturn, and then you also got to go through his health crisis. That must have been frustrating. I know they were worried about him. They're probably more worried about him than they were frustrated, but that must have been frustrating. I can only imagine. When the physical book came out, I guess that'd be like a trade paperback. I guess they call it, in comics, in American comics, they call it a trade paperback where they collect an entire arc in one book. When the physical book came out a while later, that contained like 50 chapters in a book. The readers got the finished version, which Odo redrew. Yeah. That is interesting. By the way, I need to remember to heart these things. Okay, so just finished editing everything in the rewind video, and I realized there's 2 more questions that had popped up after I started up my recording session for today. And I told people 5 o'clock. I actually started it before 5, so I figured I would circle back around and check out some more questions. Then after that, I have an observation that hit me like a ton of bricks. I'll put that at the end of the rewind, so it'll be at the very end of this video. But while I was editing, I realized something that may or may not be intentional, but it's definitely interesting. I'll put that observation at the end. In the meantime, we've got 2 comments here from Mata Kayo, something like that. First, I've noticed your ability to discern names from the title has gotten better lately. Well, reps, right? Like, Hunter Stone once said that I have the ability to be super delusional when it comes to pulling shit out of the title. So I guess the repetitions have helped me actually get better at it, or at least get realistic and less delusional about it, right? Madakayo also said, I love this format. As you said, even just one rewatch gives you so much better understanding of everything. Yeah, 100%. I'll never do this any other way. From now on, and it's easy for me to say, with 6 episodes left in the can, and then a weekly release schedule after that. Like, it's been very time consuming. I thought I'd be able to, do it at night and have enough time for people to put in questions on Patreon and do it the next night. And clearly that's not going to happen. So I'm actually have to do like a 36-hour break, reset so I can have them release in the morning and I'll have a full 24 hours. This has been way more time consuming than I thought it'd be. So it's okay though, because like it's eventually just going to be once a week that I do this. So like that's not a big deal, considering I used to do 10 or 15 episodes a week. Like this will still be less than that, but it is super time consuming. But I think it's worth it. I think I'm getting a better understanding of material. If I had done this from the beginning, I think I'd be an expert. I'd have a PhD in One Piece. The problem would be that would have taken 10 years at this rate. So there we are, right? All right, well, I think that's it for all the questions. All right, so that's the Q&A. It only took me 53 minutes. I'm going to have to start trying to somehow speed run these. But hey, like I said, it takes as long as it takes. There ain't shit I can do about it. All right, now, I'm finally going to go watch the damn episode, and I'll be back here for the rewind. All right, let's get into the rewind. First of all, I guess we'll see what the title is. To save his daughter, Kuma the Timid Pacifist. I swear to God, man. I'm really glad I don't be watching these titles, because holy shit, they be spoiling. Like, it's not a big deal, but, like, it's enough, right? Like, you hear about him being a timid pacifist for the first time in this episode. And this tells you, like, that, like, he's trying to get a cure for his daughter, so that's going to be part of it. Like, why do you do this? I think that I'll be honest with you. The anime is made for people who read the manga. Like, that's just a fact. They've got spoilers in here. They've got spoilers in the opening credits, spoilers in the closing credits. Not everything's always completely explained. It's intended for people to read the manga. If anybody else can watch it and enjoy it, that's great, but we're not the primary target. That's just, sometimes you have to understand, you're not the primary demographic. Like, I'm not the primary demographic for the manga. You know what I mean? Because, like, I'm old. The manga is probably intended for people 15 to 25. That's why it's sexless, like I was talking about in the Q&A. It's intended for probably people even younger. It's probably intended for 11 to 20, honestly. That's the target demographic. That's the primary demographic. People of all ages can enjoy it. But the primary demographic, I promise you, in the author's head is 11 to 20 or something somewhere along those lines. So I'm not the primary demographic. I'm used to, now that I'm old, I'm used to not being the primary demographic. I'm fine with that. But I think there's an extra layer this time because this is intended for people to read the manga. Because otherwise you wouldn't be doing all this spoiling shit. Like, I just don't believe it, you know? It is funny that I thought they were saying pacificists. Maybe that's why they call them that, because they're pacifiers. Well, you know, there's being a pacifist, which means you don't do violence. And then there's pacifying a location, which means you kick everybody's asses till they stop rebelling. So that means the exact opposite of being a pacifist. I always thought the pacifistics, or whatever they're called, they pacify an area. You send them in there and they pacify anybody who's violent, which means they kill them. It's just another way of saying you kill them. Not that they're pacifists. But maybe that's the origin of the name, is the fact that he's a pacifist. I just realized that. Probably. I like how he comes out of the fire and he's on fire and doesn't care, and then they put him out the barrels of water. It made me laugh in the original reaction as well. That's just a detail I really like. This is a line I particularly enjoy. You can't save anyone now. He's not trying to hear that shit. He is not trying to hear it. I mean, look at this reaction on his face. He's not trying to hear that you can't save anyone now. And so I guess they show the girl crying for her mommy, and they show him running back in. We don't see until later that he brought her body out and that the girl was crying. After that, he comes over here to kick some ass, right? But we don't see that in the moment. We see it later. I talked about this during the reaction. This must be the Sabo's country. Same approach was successful. That the celestial dragons praise their town for being beautiful and free of garbage. Yeah, this guy, they gotta be talking about Sabo's town. The timing works out. I wasn't sure in the moment of the reaction until I talked it out. I figured it out during the reaction that the timing does work. I love that they don't spoon feed us this shit. They don't mention the name of the town. You just got to figure that out for yourself. And we do, right? So, I like that. I like that. This is not a show that particularly spoon feeds you most of the time. I think it speaks to the moral character of this population. There were not protests like this in the other town in the East. We didn't see this, I think. I'm pretty sure. We didn't see a protest like this. These people are protesting because wrong is wrong. You know, and then of course you get the plan to shoot him in the face. That kind of that'll dispel the rebellion for now anyway. At least the protest for tonight, right? This is a particularly vicious line. I love this in the moment. I don't think I talked about it during the reaction, but I took note of it and I did like it a lot. Those who dare defy the king's edict, step forward. Step forward and let it be known, hey, I defy the king's edict. F the king. Shoot me in the face. Because they'll shoot you. Anybody who disagrees with me, come on forward, you know, and then you'll kill him, right? So that's a great line. And him coming out of the smoke is awesome. And like I said before, we don't see the context of his rage right now. We find out later why he's so pissed off. You can talk about executing him right now. He cleaned their clocks. They don't know what time of day it is, what day of the week it is, what month of the year it is. He cleaned their clocks and their calendars. You know, this would have been really helpful for them to say last episode, Kuma's church. That'd been really helpful to say that shit, and maybe I would have remembered that it was his parents' church. Like he actually owned the place, right? Not that the villagers gave him a church because that's the only place that they could stay, which is what I thought. So, yeah, thanks for nothing, now that I've been told. You know, it's interesting. I don't like how derogatorily she thinks of him. He's a big chicken. And I think it's said in a loving way. Because you don't want someone you love to be a violent person. I think the only kind of violence we can justify every time, all the time, is if somebody comes into your house and they mean to do you harm. They come into your house and you've been sitting in there and you ain't done nothing to nobody. They come in your house and they're trying to harm you. I don't think there's a person on this earth who will judge you for being violent to get them the hell out of your house. That's the kind of violence I don't think anybody judges. This is defensive violence, what he's doing, but he is going into their house. Because it's the only way to stop this. It's the only way to stop people from getting hurt. But it's harder to not judge it, right? Because he is going into their house, attacking them, kicking their asses, and telling them to leave the island or he's going to stomp them out. The king must have left, right? So he kicked the king's ass. Well, no, wait, he sent him away. He kicked the king's ass and sent him away, and it wasn't. He didn't tell him to leave the island. He just made him leave. Okay, he used his power to do that. Either way, he sent him away by force. Kicked their asses. That is offensive, but it's being offensive to protect people. If you know somebody's going to go shoot 12 people later, and you stab them in the heart and prevent them from doing it, like you know for a fact they're going to do it, like there's nothing you can do to stop them other than kill them. And you kill them, that's justifiable violence. As long as everybody's on board and everybody knows that like there was no way to stop them and what they were going to do, right? Like we're all on the same page. That's justifiable violence. This is justifiable violence. But I don't know that a 5-year-old can parse all that out. Well, she's 6 now. I don't know that a 6-year-old can parse all that out. The nuance of it. I'm attacking them in their house, but it's for the greater good of everybody around here, and it's going to prevent more deaths of everybody around here who are innocent and they're not hurting anybody. That's a lot to take in. That's a lot to judge. So he has protected her from all the violence he does. When he leaves, I don't know what he tells her, but we already knows he lies to her. We already know that. So he lies to her about what he's leaving for, and when he comes back, he's not coming back with the blood of his enemies all over his shirt. But he's been going out there until he turned in his cloak for his kid when she got sick. Until then, he was going to help the revolutionaries. He was going out there stomping some ass and coming back, right? Never told her what he was doing. So she thinks, she only sees the pacifist side of him. She sees the kind, gentle side of him. That's why she's calling him a big chicken. And I don't think it's a good thing for a 6-year-old to think you're a chicken if you turn the other cheek and if you're not a violent person, first of all. I don't think that's good. I don't know who the hell raised her. Like, she's bold and brazen in a way that has to be genetics, and we talked about that. This is nature, not nurture. But at 6 years old, she already thinks he's a chicken because he's not a violent person. That's a terrible attitude to have. And I wish somebody had taught her better than that. Whatever her nature is, I wish somebody had taught her that you're not a chicken if you turn the other cheek. I'm a non-violent person. I've been violent 30 years. I will be violent to protect myself or protect people I love. Other than that, I'm not going to, but I'm not a chicken, right? And I know it. Like, nobody's going to convince me I'm a chicken. But it would hurt me if my 6-year-old daughter thought I was. Simply because I'm not going around busting heads all the time, you know? I don't like that she said this. It's just, it speaks to her character. Like, you know, her personality, the way she sees the world, she sees violence as a good thing. And non-violent people as chickens, they're afraid. The only reason you could not be violent is if you're afraid, is what she thinks, right? She loves him, and she accepts him for who he is, but that's what she thinks about him. Is Dad going to be okay? He's a big chicken. It's just, that is just awful, man. That is terrible. But he never wants her to see the violent side of him, and I understand that. I wouldn't want to either if I was him. And I don't think that she has so far. Until she got the memories, I think she got a big awakening when she went into his memories. That was a massive awakening for her because she found out, I don't think she ever knew that they didn't have a biological connection. I don't think she really cared. It wouldn't matter. He still raised you. Who gives a shit? But it would be interesting to know that. You know, hey, he's not actually biologically related to me and he still raised me. The other thing I think she'll be shocked about is to find out how violent he always was when she didn't know that. I think that's really interesting. You know, I didn't really pick up on this. I was just laughing about how much of a bitch he is. Oh, I know. I'll grant you all the area that I burned down. I got rid of the human garbage, so it's prime territory now. You can have all that land, you know. Obviously, the worst thing you could have possibly said. but to him, this is a good deal. I didn't really catch that. I was more making fun of how screwed he was and how he's about to get his ass kicked. It's not a big deal. We already knew he was scum, but like I didn't actually pick up on that particular dialogue. And in that moment is when we flash back to him bringing the mom out of the fire. And this is his trigger. Who knows what he would have done if that guy hadn't said that, but he said what he said, and here's the result, right? To me, him grabbing the gun and shooting is overkill. The author wants to give Kuma as much justification as possible for what he does. I don't have a goddamn problem with what he does. He doesn't kill him now. This would be necessary if Kuma killed him. We would need a little bit more motivation if Kuma killed him, but he didn't kill him. He just sent him away. Do we need it? Are we going to hate this dude anymore because he tried to kill him? Are we going to judge Kuma any less because he tried to? I think this part's unnecessary. Personally, it's overkill. Let's just get to the point. Like, and it's stupid for the character. You know, I don't know what you thought you were doing, but you're a king. You're not a warrior, so don't even try it. Also, that seems to be the same kind of gun the Celestials use, so it's probably like a royal kind of gun, right? You can't just go to a gun and ammo store and pick this particular gun up, I don't think. It looks almost exactly like the Celestial Dragon guns. I wonder, by the way, where do they keep the bullets? Because he shot like 6 times. We don't see the circular thing, whatever they call that, that has bullets in a revolver. So it seems to be an automatic. And the hilt doesn't seem to have a clip coming out of it. And I don't know that there'd be enough room in there for a hilt. It doesn't matter. I'm just curious where the bullets are. It must be in the hilt. There's no other explanation, unless there's something coming out of the other, like the hilt. The clip is on the other side or something. I don't know. And no, the clip is not coming out of the other side. So it has to be coming from the hilt. And maybe they're really small bullets. It's a small clip, right? Or maybe it's just something where you just shove the bullets into the hilt, the grip, and there's a mechanism inside that feeds them into the chamber one at a time, I guess. I don't know. I really thought he killed this subbitch. I thought this right here meant that dude was dead until we see him later, right? Or I think they mentioned in dialogue he wasn't dead, but I thought he killed him here, and I would have been cool with it. You notice that Saturn is getting all the elder scenes now because we're dealing with him in the current day. This could have been anybody of the 5 sitting there, and then we get the close-up of his face and everything, but it's him because he's the one we're going to be dealing with. So that's just, good writing. He looks pretty the same age, but he looks old as hell here. I just want a good look at his face when I say this. He looks old as hell. So, either... He also has scars, by the way. We noticed that before. So he can take damage, apparently, and heal. Unless he was made immortal after he got to this age and after he took that damage. Otherwise, he can take physical damage and he can age very slowly or something. Something's going on there. So, what was your speculation at the time of where she got the fruit? Because I don't see an opportunity here. There's nobody that we know of that she interacts with who travels the world. She's in this. She can't leave this place without getting worse, her condition worsening. Kuma didn't have a fruit on him. Nobody in town would have had a fruit. So there's only 2 possibilities. Somebody interacted with her that we're not aware of yet. Some kind of world traveler or somebody who came back with the king. A minion or something. Somebody somehow interacted with her. Maybe they came here to give the fruit to Kuma as like a tribute or something, or some other kind of way, and she got it that way. Or there was a fruit sitting on a table in this church, and whoever originally had this power before her died on the island. Died of old age. Maybe Kuma killed them when he attacked the king's party. Those are the only 2 possibilities I can think of. Like, somebody died on the island, and suddenly a fruit that was already in this church changed into a devil fruit. Or there was a traveler she interacted with, because we haven't seen anything on camera yet that would give us any information about where she got the fruit. So what did you think? What was your theory at the time? My theory is somebody came to the island and died. And then she had a fruit somewhere in this church. It changed, she ate it. And, so on and so forth. She didn't even realize what she'd eaten, probably. because she didn't know she had a power. She's just running around, right? But it can't be a coincidence that she suddenly has a power well, it wasn't right after the attack. Actually, now that I think about it, because we had time for a new government to be installed, for the elders to hear about it. Clearly, time has passed, weeks at least, maybe months have passed since he kicked King's ass, and here finally she has a power. So it actually is not. I was wrong. It's not that kind of a coincidence. It wasn't a member of the King's party because they've been gone for at least weeks. Because they have had time to install a new government, people to start talking about the government as a fact, the elders to hear about the change in government. It's been at least a couple weeks, right? So it's not that. So somebody may have just traveled to the island, had the fruit power, and died of old age or whatever, ironically, or misadventure of some sort. And then the fruit appeared on her table. And otherwise, it's not even like it's a new fruit. Because, like, here's what I imagine. People are saying, if people desire a power to exist, that new fruit power will suddenly exist. Which means, say there's a power for me to touch raw ingredients and it suddenly turns into Thai food. Okay, whatever. That nobody has that power yet. But I want the ability to just touch the raw ingredients and it just immediately turns into a meal that I want. The cook power, right? I can do it with any meal. But nobody's ever had that power before. I want this power. It's all I've thought about for years. And suddenly, the deity or the entity or whatever it is, the sentience, decides, okay, let's give this power to the people because they want it badly enough. If you can dream it. I just realized the connection. This whole theme of the entire series is dreaming. Your dreams coming true. The fruit powers are your dreams coming true. I just realized that. That's nice. That's a nice detail. Anyway, so say that you want that to happen. Well, I assume, since it's me, there would suddenly be a fruit in my house that was already here, or in my garden, or in my yard, the orchard behind my yard, that turns into devil fruit because I wanted it. So it appears for the first time ever in the world. I'm the first person to ever get this power. It appears in my vicinity, I assume. That being the case, it wouldn't be in the book. They found it in the book. Otherwise, I would say she wanted to be, older so badly, she found a fruit that could give her the ability to be older. It appeared in the house and it had never existed before. Nobody ever had this power before. Well, we know somebody else had the power because it's in the book. So that's not what happened. So it didn't just spontaneously appear because it's in the book. My theory is somebody came to the island and died, and there's a fruit that popped up. But it's entirely possible a traveler gave it to her or something. I don't know. What was your theory? I'm curious what that was. I just... Look at this son of a bitch. That is a great expression. I love that nobody recognized her. It's clearly her. But then they reverse that joke and they undercut it when they have the old woman come in, right? And then they just assume it's her. That was a funny sequence, man. I love the whole building shot, screaming in shock. Anime's hilarious. And I love the fact that he falls back on his ass. He's done this at least 3 times, most of the time when he's being traumatized. So it shouldn't be funny, but it still is. It's still funny. See, it's in the book. So, it's not something that spontaneously appeared. Now, this is funny here. The way they just have her suddenly pop up. And they mistreat her. She really turned into an old bag. The way they be disrespecting old people on this show. Wait till the author gets old. He's like 49, 50 right now. Wait till his ass gets old. Then we'll see how funny these old jokes are to him. Former king 2 generations ago of the, what is that, Sorbet Kingdom? Sorbet? I was reading the captions the first time, so I didn't catch his title. I mean, I figured he was. He said he was Bulldog. So it's just confirmed what we already knew. Yep, the misinformation. You can't trust a bird. If you trust a bird, you're an idiot as far as I'm concerned. Or somebody else was in charge of the newspaper 7 years ago. I guess that's possible. Maybe the bird deposed the former newspaper executive and took over. I don't know. Of course, I said all that about him not exposing his daughter to his violence, but here he's talking about he'll fight back and destroy every force they muster. So she must know he can do something. And surely the townspeople talk about what he did, so she must know something. She knows more than I thought, I guess. That makes sense. They did the joke again. It's the hair color, I guess. So the question is, does he kill these people now? Is the king dead now? I'm not sure. I think so. I don't think he transported people this time. I think he just actually killed them. Look at how the ships are breaking up. Yeah, I think he killed them. All of them. Naturally, after sinking all ships and fleeing to the sea. Okay, yeah. So he killed them. That's it. That's a wrap for that stupid ass king. And 3 of your little warships. Here's the crux of the matter here, right? Like, she's a kid. Even at 12, she's a kid. I don't care. He's my daddy. She don't care that he's a hero. She don't care. Like, he did all this stuff to save more people than just her. He did all this stuff to save everybody. She doesn't care. She only cares that he's her dad. And that he's either been killed or lobotomized or whatever. And this is the driving force of her. She doesn't give a shit about the nuance of the story. She doesn't give a shit what else has been going on. She doesn't give a shit about anybody else's POV. She only cares about what she wants and what she needs and what she thinks, because she's only 12, right? So that's something to keep in mind moving forward. This foreshadows what she ends up doing, of course. I can even become an adult right now. By the way, I love that they fixed up the palace, kind of. You've got the huge-ass boards covering up places where he had smashed through and parts of the palace he had destroyed. It looks pretty messed up. This place looks familiar. Is this a place where Mihawk lives and where Zoro trained? It looks familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. Also, it looks... Maybe it was that movie I watched that wasn't canon, but the island may be real. I'm not sure. I remember the shapes. We've seen this island before. I just don't remember where, you know. I like this. In our time apart, you become a king, a tyrant, and a pirate. Kind of reminds me of that series of books, Bio of a Space Tyrant. He was all taken out of context. He wasn't really a tyrant. You know, here's the thing. Oh, I like this. It says the accent the other day. He's going to move to a new lab, right? By the way, number 8 on the Eggland Island lab. Does that mean he had 7 labs before that? I seem to remember other labs having numbers. I don't remember what the numbers are. Like, you know, Frankie's found a lab, and there's a lab where this accident happened, which I think ends up being the island where the half fire, half ice island, right? I think that's the island he just had the accident and he left, right? But Vegapunk later says he thinks Dragon would be enraged by this deal they make. But Dragon's not an idiot. He had to know, if you're sending this man to Vegapunk to get work done on his kid, that's going to take a lot to fix the kid. You got to know Kuma's going to have to give him something. You know the kind of man Vegapunk is. You know the kind of thing he's going to want. There's no way Dragon didn't see this coming. So I think maybe he wouldn't know the particulars of the deal. Maybe he couldn't imagine, we'll get clone soldiers or whatever. But he knew Kuma was going to have to give up something. He was going to have to give him something. And it'd be something that would probably be to the detriment of the people. But I feel like he knew that, and he's willing to do that because this is Kuma, one of the best people he's ever known, and Kuma deserves a happy ending. So I think Dragon knew it. It was a calculated risk, hoping that whatever he gave Vegapunk wouldn't be so bad that it offset the joy it would bring for Kuma to get his daughter cured, right? I think he made an informed choice. I think he made a calculated risk. We'll find out, but that's what I think. This is also interesting. He's normally not someone you can easily meet. But right now, the security is evidently lax. There's 2 things that's interesting about that. First of all, why is security lax? I guess because he's moving to a new lab. Or is the government getting tired of him? And when he can come to them with, hey, I've got this idea to have these clone soldiers, they're going to be awesome, and they can shoot lasers out of their hands, then they're like, okay, yeah, then the government's back on board. I think this could have been a phase where the government was a little irritated with him because of the accident and how much it cost. And so they had pulled some of the security from him. And then after he makes this deal with Kuma and can provide him with these, Pacific assists, the government's back on board and he gets full funding and full security again. So the second thing that's interesting is that Dragon knew about this. How do you know? What are his sources? He has sources high up in the government, I think. This is funny. This is really funny. She kicked his ass. Live to eat, by the way, is on her shirt. Pretty much. That pretty much sums her up. Live to eat. So I guess what we're saying here is she has buck in her blood in her. That's why she's so strong. Not just the fruit power, but she has buck in her blood in her. So I think that's why she's so powerful to be able to attack people and shit. I'll be using technology not yet introduced in clinical medicine. Interesting. Also interesting. I didn't notice this. That Axe Boy is here. I was just paying attention to her and reading the dialogue, and it's a quick shot. But yeah, I didn't notice that he was here. Interesting. They're already buddies, right? Yeah, Vegapunk and Axe Boy. And then which is why he gets put in charge of the clones. But yeah, I'll be using technology not yet introduced into clinical medicine. So people around the world will be able to cure this disease in 20 years. Just not right now. Yep, talking about stem cells. Stem cells are the science fiction writing equivalent of magic. You can do anything. I know we can in science, actual medicine, we can do a lot with stem cells. But in science fiction writing, you can do anything with stem cells. Anything you want. If you want a nose to grow out of your ass, you can do it with stem cells. So it's a catch-all. It's like the word quantum computer, quantum robot, quantum taco, right? If you just put the word quantum in front of something, that makes it magic in science stories. Stem cells, same thing. I like this. Is she gonna become a cyborg? It'll cost as much, I said. In other words, no, I'm not turning into a cyborg. It would cost as much as if I did. Yeah, but that's a valid fear from a father. Are you turning her into a cyborg, you piece of shit? I love this moment here. It's like, are you a buccaneer? Yep. Hey, I'm on the government side. In other words, I should report you and have you executed. That's what you're supposed to do if you're with the government, right? And he is immediately overcome with his scientific gluttony, what he can do with buccaneer blood. So he's on the government side, but really he's on his side, right? He's on his own side. I don't think he spares Kuma because Kuma said, I trust Dragon. He spares Kuma because he can use his blood and make the government happy. That's why he spares him. Look at this look on his face. You won't have to pay for the immense cost of Bonnie's procedure. This is an evil ass look. This is a self-indulgent, stinky look of somebody who's manipulating somebody or driving a hard bargain. Not necessarily manipulating, but you got him over barrel. He even says in a minute, I'll do anything. I don't give a shit. He will do anything to save his daughter, and you know it. Look at this look on his face. I don't trust this sumbitch, man. Like, he's goofy and eccentric, and that makes people like him. I don't trust him. I think he's evil. I think he will turn on you in the right circumstances. I wouldn't trust him to co-sign a dollar bill. I'm just saying. Here's the pie in the sky bullshit. The sturdy bodies of my soldiers will act as shields to repel bullets and save the weak. That's some mighty deep horse shit you're shoveling there, Just saying. Dragon will be furious about these terms. I don't think so. I could be wrong. But Dragon's a fool if he didn't anticipate this. So he had to have known. Vegapunk wasn't going to do anything for free. He's known the man for too long. He's going to get his. He's coming out of this with something. You had to know that. This really is the crux of the matter. If Bonnie can be saved, I wouldn't have cared if you were a devil. Like, he don't give a shit. I wonder if he ever comes to regret this. I don't think so because he loves Bonnie so much, but I wonder. This is interesting. Talking about clone soldiers or weapons are judged by how many people they kill. Vegapunk doesn't know how to make the most of opportunities. Well, that's not really his job, is it? His job is to make the shit. Your job is to decide how they get used. So this is an odd comment, I think. This is also interesting. He says, I have an idea. If somebody says, yes, sir, I'm at your command. I don't recognize the voice speaking. And we're not shown who it is. And probably in the manga, they show a word bubble going off screen. So whoever it actually is, they probably just use a generic voiceover actor because we're not supposed to recognize the person yet. That's what I'm thinking. And here we go. Well, it's a hell of an episode, man. I think things are lining up we're probably only going to get like 2 more episodes of flashbacks, and we'll finally be back into the real action. But this has all been very interesting. So I'm not mad about it. I'm just saying, you know. Now for my observation. I don't think this is intentional, but it strikes me. Does this remind you of a movie? We have a woman named Jenny that our protagonist is in love with. They never consummate the relationship. She goes away, and when he sees her again, she has a child that is not his. And then she immediately dies, and it's up to him to raise the child. Does that sound like a famous Oscar-winning movie to you? It sure as hell does to me. Now, Jenny is spelled differently. This is Ginny, where the Jenny I'm thinking about from the famous Oscar-winning movie is Jenny. But this author has done pop culture references before. I think there's at least a 33% chance that this is intentional. There's another 33% chance it's subconscious. He didn't do it on purpose, but he pulled the name of Jenny out of thin air because his subconscious remembered this movie he had seen years ago. And a 33% chance it's just a complete coincidence. If I had to place my money, if I had to place my bet, we're at the casino, I'm putting my chips in the middle of the table, I'm going to think it's an intentional pop culture reference. I'm locking that pick in Chase Bridges style. I don't know if we'll ever know. Maybe he's talked about it in an interview at some point. He does the Q&As. If somebody ever noticed this and asked him about it, I bet he would tell the truth. So let me know if that ever happened.